Hello, and welcome to Into the Night, a Five Nights at Freddy's podcast. I'm your host, Nick, and thank you for listening. On today's episode, we're going to be discussing the first three games in the Five Nights at Freddy's series. When dissecting a story as complex as the one present in Five Nights at Freddy's, you gotta start at the foundation before getting into broader subjects. In its adolescent stages, where the series was still being constructed by one man, the game's stories worked on a much smaller scale. The games were more prioritized in delivering on its dark atmosphere and tension-filled gameplay, rather than an overarching narrative that would create a universe that would span across a plethora of books and games. This is the Five Nights at Freddy's that most people probably know about. The rundown pizzeria, the night guard being hunted down by animatronics for not even minimum wage, and the spirits of children haunting this world eternally searching for their killer, an elusive smiling man in the shadows. This is episode 2, The Missing Children's Incident. Our story begins in 1993, with the position opening up at the children's entertainment restaurant, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a self-described magical place where fantasy and fun come to life. The location is reminiscent of its real-life counterparts of Chuck E. Cheese, or more accurately, Showbiz Pizza Place. Arcades line up the halls for children to win tickets to turn into prizes, and the pizza is either a bit too soggy or a bit too greasy and always has that weird aftertaste. Bright colors and loud music bounced off the walls while parents would entertain themselves with idle chat with other adults, watching the theatrics of their children screaming and playing to their heart's content without a care in the world. And of course, there was the main attraction, the Animatronic Band.
Hello, everybody. You ready to have a good time? I know I am. 'Cause it's Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. For kids, it's number one. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, where fantasy meets fun.
Fun not actually guaranteed.
The seating mascot ensemble was led by the figurehead of the restaurant chain, Freddy Fazbear himself, accompanied by his bandmates, Bonnie the Bunny and Chica the Chicken, along with Fox the Pirate, who entertained children on his own private stage of Pirate's Cove. While some patrons could see them as a bit too uncanny, these robots have been entertaining the innocent heart of children for over a decade. Through all the grime, tears, and unwashed grease-stained hands, they made children smile and marked a special place in their memories and hearts.
Get your pizza by the pound. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, where all the kids are safe and sound.
Unfortunately, while the restaurant used to be a massive chain hosting numerous locations, it has now become a remote pizzeria with the rare occurrence of anyone daring to take their child inside. Business slowed down so badly that management has been looking for someone to buy them out for months, but nobody credible or uncredible wants to associate themselves with the brand. A reputation made even worse by the poor condition of the robotic entertainers, who become well acquainted with the local health department. The pizzeria has been given numerous citations concerning health, sanitation, and staff and employee well-being, but the health department's main concern has always involved the stage performers. Most notably, reports from parents who smelled foul odor and spotted fluid-like blood leaking from the decade-old machinery. For all these reasons, and any other incident that the company takes absolutely no responsibility for unless proven otherwise, the very last Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is set to close its door by the end of the year. That said, they still need somebody to look over their establishment at night. Ever since their previous night guard reportedly quit, a man who gives his name as Mike Schmidt decides to take the job of security guard, taking the night shift. An easy enough job. All he has to do is monitor the cameras, ensure the general safety of their equipment and property, and of course, to watch over their animatronic characters from the hours of 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. Fortunately for Mike, the previous guard was helpful enough to leave some helpful audio over the phone in the security office. The man over the phone explains that he's recording these to you as he's finishing up his last few shifts of his final week, and that Mike will have nothing to worry about on his shift. As Mike gets settled in, the man on the phone reads off some company legalese in a voice reminiscent of a man who hasn't gotten enough sleep and is ready to get off work. Quote, Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for damage to property or person. Upon discovering that damage or death has occurred, a missing persons report will be filed within 90 days,
or as soon as property and premises have been thoroughly cleaned and bleached and the carpets have been replaced, blah, blah, blah. Now, that might sound bad, I know, but there's really nothing to worry about. The animatronic characters here do get a bit quirky at night, but do I blame them? No. If I were forced to sing those same stupid songs for 20 years and I never got a bath, I'd probably be a bit irritable at night too. So just be aware, the characters do tend to wander a bit. They're left in some kind of free roaming mode at night. Something about their servos locking up if they get turned off for too long. They used to be allowed to walk around during the day too, but then there was the bite of 87. Yeah. It's amazing that the human body can live without the frontal lobe, you know? Now, concerning your safety, the only real risk to you as a night watchman here, if any, is the fact that these characters, if they happen to see you after hours, probably won't recognize you as a person. They'll most likely see you as a metal endoskeleton without its costume on. Now, since that's against the rules here at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, they'll probably try to forcefully stuff you inside a Freddy Fazbear suit. Now, that wouldn't be so bad if the suits themselves weren't filled with cross beams, wires, and animatronic devices, especially around the facial area. So you can imagine how having your head forcefully pressed inside one of those could cause a bit of discomfort and death. The only parts of you that would likely see the light of day again would be your eyeballs and teeth when they pop out the front of the mask. Yeah, they don't tell you these things when you sign up.
Evidently not. Now, we are never given a name for this man, so the community, and eventually the game's canon, dubbed him as Phone Guy. And Phone Guy's warning proves to be very valid. As the once static characters in the show stage begin to roam, the isolated pizzeria starts to emit abnormal sounds, echoing music, springs coiling, and metallic feet moving in the shadows of the night. Only ever once in a while spotting those anthropomorphic cartoons stalking about, barely visible through the erratic static of the camera panels, looking directly at Michael through the camera feed on the screen. Even more preternatural is whenever the animatronics get close enough, I can almost hear the faint imitation of breathing and groans leaking out of the suits. To stop them from getting to him, Mike uses his security room doors to lock them outside his camera's blind spots. But unfortunately, leaving them down for too long would drain the building's limited power supply. Apparently, business has been going that badly for Fazbear Entertainment. And as a safety precaution, the moment power limit is reached and the facility goes dark, the doors will open. So Michael must plan his moves accordingly if he wishes to make it to the birth of dawn. In between the fear of death, one might wonder why these machines are acting so erratic and homicidal at night. Might even begin to question what's inside them that causes this chaotic behavior. Lucky for us, and Michael, Phone Guy is helpful to have taken a look, and was able to let us know what he found out on his final day on the job.
Oh, hey, wow, day 4. I knew you could do it. Hey, listen, I may not be around to send you a message tomorrow. It's been a bad night here for me. I'm kind of glad that I recorded my messages for you when I did. Hey, do me a favor. Maybe sometime you could check inside those suits in the back room. I'm going to try to hold out until someone checks. Maybe it won't be so bad. Yeah, I always wondered what was in all those empty heads back there. You know. Oh no.
What Phone Guy found could be better explained through the newspaper clippings found on the walls of Freddy Fazbear's. While Michael, and by extension you, the player, may miss it, the walls of Freddy's don't always look the same. The pizzeria is actually never at a constant state, and instead, its environment is continuously fluctuating. Sometimes posters and children's artwork on the stained brick walls would change into children crying, and stationary objects can suddenly shift into view of your general direction. These newspaper clippings are just one of the many examples of such supernatural phenomenon, as well as possibly the explanation and origin of said phenomenon. Quote,
Kids vanish at local pizzeria. Bodies not found. 2 local children were reportedly alerted to a back room during the late hours of operations at Freddy Fazbear Pizza on the night of June 26. While video surveillance identified the man responsible until his capture the following morning, the children themselves were never found and are presumed dead. Police think the suspect dressed as a company mascot to earn the children's trust.
unquote. Another newspaper clipping from a more recent date elaborates further. Quote,
5 children now reported missing. Suspect convicted. 5 children now linked to the incident at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, where a man dressed as a cartoon mascot lured them into a back room. While the suspect has been charged, the bodies themselves were never found. Freddy Fazbear Pizza has been fighting an uphill battle ever since to convince families to return to the pizzeria. It's a tragedy.
unquote. The last part of that quote was most likely from the upper management of Fazbear Entertainment, the parent company that owns the restaurant chain. The same company shutting down said restaurant chain by the end of the year due to parental lack of trust in the business safety for children, as well as the foul odors leaking from the animatronic characters. If you haven't figured it out yet, there is one final newspaper clipping that should put any doubts to rest, as it explains what exactly is the source of those foul odors. That being blood and mucus leaking out of the eyes and mouths of the mascots, likening them to reanimated carcasses. The moans, the behavior, all the paranormal events. The children who went missing never left. They lived on in their misery. Within the characters they loved, they lived on. This event of 5 missing children would go on to be known as the Missing Children Incident, or MCI for short. After Mike survives the children's wrath for a week and completes his work shift, obtains his $120 paycheck, and is promptly fired for tampering with the animatronics for reasons we can only assume. The business will fade into obscurity, and all its past incidences will be forgotten by year's end. One final note I'd like to make before moving on to Five Nights at Freddy's 2. You may have noticed that I said 5 kids went missing, but only mentioned 4 animatronic characters: Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. If all the kids possessed the suits of these characters, what happened to the 5th child? Well, there just so happens to be one character that haunts the pizzeria, seldom if you see him, but occasionally, when the poster in the restaurants change, the poster in the West Hall can change it to what looks to be a yellow version of Freddy, screaming, with nothing in his sockets but a black endless void. Lowering the camera monitor will cause a spew of hallucinations, including which will be a slumped over yellow Freddy, staring directly at you and emitting the faintest of giggles. This entity is known as Golden Freddy. It isn't an animatronic, as opening the camera panel up again will cause it to disappear, but it can kill you, so it isn't an hallucination either. This is the presumed location and identity of our 5th missing child spirit. For reasons unknown, this child seems to be a spectral ghost, the manifestation taking the form of this yellow Freddy, with the barest hint of life coming from white specks of light from his dark sockets. But even to this day, the reasoning behind the spirit taking the form of an apparition and the limit to their capabilities is currently unknown. Let's actually take a minute to talk about the missing children's incident by spinning back the clock a little bit. While we can't go into the details of the missing children incident right now, we can go into some more fine print details on how Fazbear Entertainment responded to these disappearances, as it is explored in the second game of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, fittingly called Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Taking place in November 1987, 6 years before the events of the first game, Fazbear Entertainment has been busy coming up with a solution for their PR nightmare of children disappearing on their business premises, even willing to pay a fortune to find some return on their investment in the company. Bigger locations, bigger attractions, more arcade machines, more party rooms, and animatronic entertainment constructed with the top-of-the-line cutting-edge technology. This new location hosts what has been canonically called the Toy Animatronics, including revamped versions of Freddy.
Would you like to hear one of my copyrighted jingles?
Bonnie.
Don't worry, this next part won't hurt a bit.
Chica.
Did someone invite me to a party?
And Foxy.
We're going to have such terrible, wonderful fun.
As well as newer mascots, a tall, lanky, gift-giving puppet known as the Marionette, and a stout, humanoid robot known as Balloon Boy.
Hello?
Each one of these brand new mechanical attractions are much cleaner and sleek compared to their original counterparts, which use leather padding to make their outer shell, as well as more simplistic computer systems. The toy animatronics are more advanced and come complete with facial recognition technology linked to a criminal database to ensure that children are always safe and sound, for their protection, the parent's conscience, and the company's bottom line.
You can trust me. I'm friends with everyone.
Essentially, Fazbear Entertainment is taking every precaution to make sure that nobody will be hurt during business hours, even hiring a day guard for this brand new location as well as a night guard. That said, they aren't perfect, especially when it comes to their own hardware. Fazbear Entertainment did need to cut corners in some places to turn a profit, and that just so happens to be in spare parts. The original Fazbear gang, the ones from the MCI, are actually in the parts and service room of the newer location, ready to be pulled apart at a moment's notice to repair their replacements. That's not to say complacency and shortcutting isn't a philosophy owned solely by Fazbear Corp. The employers at this new location have also started to become lazy when it comes to safety concerns, especially when it comes to their youngest customers. You see, similar to the setup of the original pizzeria, the Foxy animatronic is separate from the main band, making up a solo act on a separate location. In this case, Fazbear Entertainment has made a toddler play zone, known as Kids Cove, for the toy Foxy animatronic to entertain children. Unfortunately, children simply can't keep their hands to themselves, and they have been known to tear up parts of Toy Foxy during business hours. The staff of the restaurant have been attempting to repair him after every shift, but the employees just simply acquiesce that no matter how many times they put her back together, Toy Foxy will be pulled apart all over again. So, they gave up, and Toy Foxy was made into a take apart and put back together again attraction. The employees even gave her a new name. They called him the Mango.
I know they said I couldn't be put back together, but see how long they are.
Luckily for the staff, there is one man who we can begrudgingly rely on. Yes, our old soon-to-be deceased phone guy also worked at this location as a, Okay, if I'm being completely honest here, I have no idea what phone guy's position is in the company at this time. In the original game, he was just simply the night guard of the location. Here, that position is already filled, and as well as the day guard position. And he doesn't seem to be part of the general staff or management. From what this game presents, he is most likely some form of HR representative. Think Toby from The Office, someone isolated and neutral in the work environment, but still reports to higher-ups of the corporation and management. Anyway, all is going well with the grand reopening until the night guard requested transfer to the day shift, relegating a spot open for a new hire. This time, the mantle of night guard was taken by a man named Jeremy Fitzgerald, who, just like Mike Schmidt, must work a full week on the job. Luckily, with the new toy animatronics primed with security and all this emphasis on safety, Jeremy should be golden. Right?
The first guy finished his week but complained about conditions. We switched him over to the day shift. So, hey, lucky you, right? Mainly he expressed concern that certain characters seemed to move around at night and even attempted to get into his office. Now, from what we know, that should be impossible. That restaurant should be the safest place on Earth. So while our engineers don't really have an explanation for this, the working theory is that the robots were never given a proper night mode. So when it gets quiet, they think they're in the wrong room. So then they go try to find where the people are, and in this case, that's your office. So our temporary solution is this. There's a music box over by the prize counter, and it's rigged to be wound up remotely. So just every once in a while, switch over to the prize counter video feed and wind it up for a few seconds. It doesn't seem to affect all of the animatronics, but it does affect one of them. And as for the rest of them, we have an even easier solution. You see, there may be a minor glitch in the system, something about robots seeing you as an endoskeleton without a costume on and wanting to stuff you into a suit. So hey, we've given you an empty Freddy Fazbear head. Problem solved. You can put it on any time and leave it on for as long as you want. Eventually anything that wandered in will wander back out.
Right. Essentially, Phone Guy has explained the obstacles that Jeremy must survive each night, as the toy animatronics have seemingly adopted the kinks of their predecessors. In fact, Phone Guy is adamant on later nights to Jeremy that the toy robots are actually, well, aggressive. The toy animatronics apparently have a reputation for interacting with children fine, but whenever an adult enters the equation, they just give off a blank, lifeless stare. Luckily, Phone Guy also informs Jeremy that day shift reports nothing unusual going on besides the animatronic behavior. You may have also caught that Phone Guy mentioned a music box affecting one of the animatronics. Well, that just so happens to be the marionette. The marionette is strange. It apparently has a weird aura around it. It even gives Phone Guy the creeps. In fact, he also reports that he seems to be more aware than the others.
I'll be honest, I never liked that puppet thing. It's always thinking, and it can go anywhere. I don't think the Freddy mask will fool us, so just don't forget the music box.
That same call, he also apologized to Jeremy that the older animatronics, though they have no reason to be active, are completely active and will wander the halls at night as well. Perhaps now we know why the old night guard left for the day shift, huh? Still, despite Phone Guy's plea that everything's under control, he still can't help slip to Jeremy that things have been going from grand to worse. Apparently, rumors have been spread about the restaurant, and some form of police investigation has been going on around the pizzeria. He doesn't go into detail, but when things seem to be getting noticeably bad by the end of Jeremy's week, he lets us know that the investigation was more than just police speculation. In fact, the whole building is on lockdown. With the exception of Jeremy, nobody's supposed to be allowed in or out, especially regarding any previous employees. Once again, Phone Guy doesn't go into much detail about the subject, but he does inform us that Jeremy will be transferred to day shift once everything has been sorted out, as the position has suddenly become vacant. Things are so bad that they are even trying to get in contact with the previous owners of the business. Not of Fazbear Entertainment, mind you, but the original pizzeria that Fazbear Entertainment bought out. A little place that started the entire brand, Fazbear's Family Diner. But Phone Guy doesn't think the company will find anyone. The business has been closed for years, so he'll update Jeremy come his 6th night on the job.
Hello. What on earth are you doing there? Didn't you get the memo? The place is closed down, at least for a while. Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right. Listen, just finish your shift. It's safer than trying to leave in the middle of the night. We have one more event scheduled for tomorrow, a birthday. You'll be on day shift. Wear your uniform. Stay close to the animatronics and make sure they don't hurt anyone, okay? For now, just make it through the night. When the place eventually opens again, I'll probably take the night shift myself. Okay, good night and good luck.
Once Jeremy's shift ends, the newspaper lets us know that new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza will be closing its door for good. Only after a few short weeks, the new 20 animatronics are planned to be scrapped due to possible malfunction. However, the original characters will be kept for reorganization of the company, even if that means operating on a much smaller scale with a much smaller budget. And that is the story of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Jeremy moves to the day shift, and the night shift for the final night before complete closure is carried out by a man named Fritz Smith, who is also promptly fired afterwards for foul odor and animatronic tampering, but also probably just fired so Fazbear Entertainment didn't have to pay some random new hire schmuck for a single day of work. Now, I sense that you wish for a bigger picture, as I did keep this brief. What exactly went wrong with the toy animatronics? What happened to the day shift guard? What was that investigation all about? Why is the public so aware that a music box must be used to calm him down? What even happened to Jeremy? And what exactly is this original restaurant, even for the ones that host the withered original animatronics, called Fazbear's Family Diner? Well, let me enlighten you on a few of these mysteries, because to fully understand them, you need all of the puzzle pieces. I haven't mentioned it yet, but a mechanic present in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is a meta form of storytelling called death minigames. Whenever an animatronic kills Jeremy in the game, there is an odd chance that instead of being booted to the main menu to try again, the player will be greeted with a vibrant crimson static. After it abruptly clears, the players will find themselves in an old-school Atari-style minigame, with a creaking ambience reminiscent of the hum of box televisions. These cutscenes have no dialogue and seldom have any written words, but each minigame is separated with a different phrase repeated on a loop from an otherworldly voice in the background, signaling off barely heard letters, spelling out short sentences or commands. Each minigame is different, but have a few recurring events. It usually has the player take control of a Fazbear mascot character, completing some arbitrary tasks like taking cake to the children as Freddy or moving the show stage as Foxy. But over time, the minigames start to unveil their true intentions. For instance, the minigame where you take cake to the children as Freddy has you play the titular character inside a small room. The small location is, in actuality, representative of Fazbear's Family Diner, hence why no other characters are seemingly present. There is one oddity, however. A child outside the building, looking through the window, sobbing uncontrollably, As the game continues, a purple car starts to drive by, and a man represented in nothing but the color purple and a wide smile gets out of his car. The crying child acts surprised and begins to cry out even harder, the tear sprites enveloping and overlapping the character on the screen before nothing reminiscent of a dead child is present, and the smiling purple man gets into his car and drives away when all of a sudden... The marionette jump scares the player, coming out of the black void of a background as if apparating out of the television screen. What I would just describe to you is an abridged version of the origin of the marionette. It was the first victim, the first child ever to lose their life at one of these establishments, even before the missing children incident. As two other minigames elaborate further on, that same purple man was behind the slaughter of the original 5 missing children, killing them all by disguising himself in a yellow suit to have gained their trust, as the police told us he suspected back in the newspaper clippings in Five Nights at Freddy's 1. But his original victim, the marionette, was there. The marionette gave gifts, both literally and figuratively, to his victims, by giving them the gift of life, and allowed their souls to linger on in this world and the mascot characters they love. The final death minigame clears up the last few missing pieces, those being the investigation and what happened to shut the new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza down. Simply put, as you probably suspected, that day shift guard was the purple guy, and he killed another 5 children. The ominous voice in the background spells out SAVETHEM as you play as the withered Freddy following around the marionette in the brand new pizzeria, only for that same smiling man wearing his day shift uniform to tackle and deactivate Freddy into another static screen with the words, "You can't." As some of you more highly aware of this franchise know, this is the infamous purple guy. Now, unlike Phone Guy, this man does have a canonical name, but we're going to put a pin in that information right now. We'll be going over all of that eventually, but all you have to know for the current story is that this man is responsible for every ounce of misery and agony caused by the victims and families of this establishment. A cold-hearted man who smiles when taking the life of an innocent, depicted in a shadowy aura of purple and blackened eyes with the faintest flicker of life hinting at the presence of a human soul. Before we wrap up for the day, I should probably close up one final plot point that I didn't talk about yet, and if I'm being honest, it really isn't that important. That is the bite of 87. You may remember Phone Guy mentioned this in a phone call back in 1993. It was the reason behind the animatronic stationary's position during the day and why no one found it apropos that the toy animatronics could walk about the building during operating hours. You see, the problem with this little section is that, well, there isn't a clear answer as to what exactly happened. We know the broad strokes. An animatronic bit off the frontal lobe of somebody. They survived, but it's the reason as to why animatronics are handicapped when the sun is out. There isn't much to go on here than theory, which is unfortunately dangerous territory to enter, but the common conclusion that most agree upon is that Jeremy Fitzgerald, who was ordered to stay close to the animatronics during his day shift, had his frontal lobe bitten off by the mangle, evident by how, when the mangle attacks Jeremy during his night shift, it usually does it perched up on the ceiling like a spider and swings for his head. But like I said, this plot point is really not that important. It doesn't come back to play in almost any other point in Five Nights at Freddy's canon, and it really is just an old mystery that simply was never fully answered and probably never will be. And with that, I believe today's episode is over. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to stay updated, please consider subscribing or sharing this podcast. It truly helps us broaden our reach. And consider following us at our Twitter @Fazbear Podcast or using the link in the description. On our next episode, we'll be finishing the missing children's incident arc of the franchise. We'll be time jumping nearly 30 years after the events of the first game, where Fazbear Entertainment and its tragedies are no more than an urban myth, and ignorance will prove valuable to those with dark intentions. So please, join us as we wrap up our first arc with Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Once again, I have been your host, Nick, and thank you for listening. Have a good night.